Good evening, all Ghost Tour participants. Welcome to Old Ellicott City, Maryland. Tonight, we're coming to you from the Howard County Historical Society. Did you know that our town was 237 years old, and it has many buildings that have had the experience of having ghostly figures within the walls of those buildings? Tonight, I'm going to tell you several ghostly tales about the buildings in Ellicott City. Mainly, there's two of them. Tonight, I'm going to tell you first about the judge's bench. Now, originally it had a development there that was a flooring business. It was a dwelling, but for a long, long time, it was a burger grocery store, a mom and pop operation. Now, in the 1940s and 1950s, our town acquired a very terrible reputation. There were far too many drinking establishments. There was a lot of drunkenness. There was a plethora of ladies of the night. There were winos and many unsavory characters. Why, we even have a tavern in the town that there were so many fights and stabbings that we referred to it as the Bloody Bucket. Now, because of this terrible reputation, the government actually forbid and made it off limits for all military personnel. Now, because of this reputation, the Burgers kept a very tight rein on their teenage daughters and forbid her to date any of the Ellicott City boys. Now, Mary worked very hard for her parents in the grocery store, but along about the age of 19, she met and fell in love with a Howard County lad. Now, when her parents found out, they actually forbid her to ever see him again. It devastated poor Mary. She begged and she pleaded with them, but they just wouldn't listen. She tried to tell them that he was one of the good guys, but to no avail. She became very despondent, and she saw no other way out. And one night, she went up to the upper floors and she hung herself from one of the rafters. Mary's life left her at that moment, but the strong spirit within her body never left the building. You know, you might ask, how do we know this? Well, we have stories that we can tell you about. In the 1970s, when the very first owners of the judge's bench decided to renovate the building, many of the workers said that during their working in the upper rooms, they would see the fleeing image of a ghostly person, a young girl walking down the hallway or entering one of the rooms. And then later, when the judge's bench actually opened, the wait staff told stories that when they had to go into one of the storerooms all by themselves, they felt this creepy, eerie feeling that someone else was in the room with them. They could hardly wait to get out of that room. And then we have stories from the bartenders who said that on strange times of the day, a bottle on the back bar would start to rattle and shake and actually tremble to the point it would dash and fall off of the bar, crash onto the floor. Was this the ghost of Mary trying to get attention? You know that's what ghosts do. They're always trying to get our attention. And then we have the stories from the patrons who said they'd be sitting there having a drink or eating a meal, and they'd suddenly feel the tapping on the back of their shoulder. They'd turn around. No one was there. And you know, the tapping still insisted, and they had to actually get up and go outside and shake off that terrible feeling before they could come back in. And then one of the strangest things that ever happened that was indications that Mary's spirit was still working was the mysterious unrolling of toilet paper across the floor. Now, ladies, if you have to go to the ladies' room at the judge's bench, and when you walk into that unoccupied room and you find toilet paper unraveled across the floor, be very careful coming down the steps, because you just might bump into the ghost of Mary Berger. Now, the other story I want to tell you about is the old Sykes building. 119 years ago, it was built by Mordecai Sykes and his family. He was the town's very first mayor. He was also a dentist, and he practiced on the first floor, and he and his family lived on the upper floors of that building. Now, that present building is being occupied by Tersegal's Old Country French restaurant. We have heard stories about that. If you're making a tour of Tersegal's and you choose to go down to visit the wine cellar, be very careful. It's a small, narrow, steep stairway down into the cellar. And when you get down there, you will find a mysterious-looking water cistern. Please, stay clear, because who knows what evil lurks between the walls of that old cistern. Now, we've heard stories from the maitre d'. The maitre d' tells us some strange stories that usually happen late at night when the restaurant is closed. He said they have a process of turning out all the lights. They send someone up to the upper floors and extinguish any and all lights. Then they descend to the second floor and take all the lights out on that floor. Then they get down to the bottom floor, and that is to close the building up for the night. But on occasion, they've looked up and a light has relit on one of the upper floors. Now, it takes a very brave person to take a flashlight and go up into that darkened building to extinguish that strange light that came back on. Could this be one of those wandering psych ghosts trying to gain attention? Like I told you, that's what they do. Ghosts are always trying to get your attention. The maitre d' tells us about the fact that he came and was doing some paperwork in the small bar that's toward the front of the building near the main entrance. They were closed and the doors were all locked, and he was doing paperwork, and suddenly he felt the presence of someone or something standing directly behind him. In fact, it was so close that he could feel the breath on the back of his neck. It made the hairs stand up. He turned around and he was looking into a mirror that was hanging on the wall, and he suddenly saw a shadow disappear out of the mirror. Again, Sykes family ghost still working, because the doors were all locked and it was closed to any outsiders. We also know that if you're in Tersegal's and you feel someone tap you on the shoulder and you look around and you don't find anyone there, don't be alarmed. It might just be the ghost of that old mayor, Mordecai Sykes, trying to get your attention. Now, folks, I hope you've enjoyed my many stories, and I want you to continue to visit all the other old buildings in Ellicott City and hear their ghostly stories. And if you still have any doubts about the existence of ghosts, just remember of the stories from thousands and thousands of years ago about ghosts in castles and museums and mansions, and those ghostly ships that had suddenly disappeared within the Bermuda Triangle. Oh, and don't forget Charles Dickens' ghost of Christmases past, present, and future. Yikes! Have fun!
Spirits of Ellicott City is part of an exciting series of ghost tours through Howard County Tourism and Promotion. To learn more, visit www.visithowardcounty.com or call 1-800-288-8747.